Shame on you if you do not.
I call Scott Simpson.
Mr. Speaker, as we draw to an end this introductory debate on the Immigration Amendment Bill, it's a great pleasure for me to rise in the House today to support it and support it with vigour. Mr. Speaker, we are a very desirable part of the world. We are one of the world's most favoured nations, and we live in a global environment where there are no shortage of desperate people living in desperate circumstances and living lives that they want to remove themselves from those desperate circumstances. There are no shortage of despicable people who would seek to trade in human misery. And they are happy to smuggle people. They are happy, sir, to smuggle people around the world in the most offensive and miserable circumstances. And we must stand as a responsible international citizen to ensure that they cannot and do not prosper, sir. And so this piece of legislation, this very good and wise piece of legislation, is designed to ensure that we are prepared for the onslaught that may yet come. And as I hear voices on the opposition benches, and as we've heard during this debate so far today, Mr. Speaker, we have heard from people who would be the first to criticise, Mr. Speaker, should this legislation not be in place and we were to find ourselves being swamped by people smugglers who were bringing in the desperate and the poor and the impoverished who have very few choices, Mr. Speaker. And so, because we live in this desperate world, we must, and the responsible thing we must do is be prepared, because we are such an attractive destination. And as I've listened to this debate this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, I've heard members from the opposition and the Green Party talk in very high-handed and mighty tones about all sorts of things except the protection of what this country values most of all, which is its border. And we value our border because it is such a wide border. And it is a border that has, until recent times, been protected largely due to our position on the globe. Distance has, for our trade environment, been a great burden. But in terms of protecting our border, distance has actually been our greatest protection. But these days, sir, with modern science and innovation and engineering, there is the capacity for very, very sophisticated vessels to arrive on our shores laden with the desperate and the poor, who are the customers and the victims of people smuggling. And it's this legislation that we must support in order to ensure that that cannot and does not happen. This, sir, is the sort of legislation that Australia should have been considering many years ago. And the arguments we've heard today, sir, are the sorts of arguments we probably heard from people who opposed that sort of thing back then and who now have lived to rue the day. We find that people smugglers today, sir, are well-resourced, well-funded and well-organised. And they will leave no stone unturned in terms of plying their evil trade. They have access to sophisticated technology, they have access to sophisticated vessels, steel-hulled vessels, who can and will make the journey to our shores. And we must use this piece of legislation, sir, as a deterrent to people smuggling, to ensure that their filthy, evil trade cannot succeed in our part of the world. And so this piece of legislation, sir, will enhance our ability to do exactly that, to deter people smuggling, and by making it as unattractive an option as is possible, so that those people will not seek us out as a soft touch, sir. And New Zealand takes a firm stance on illegal immigration ventures, and we will, sir, continue to do so. Queue jumpers should not be able to push in front of people who are genuine refugees and asylum seekers, because we adhere and respect the process to which we've signed up to as a responsible member of the international community. And we have an obligation, an absolute obligation, sir, to ensure that is true. And so, sir, as we conclude this debate, I am speaking today very much in support of it, and I endorse and commend this legislation to the House, sir.
Members, order. Members, this debate has concluded. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Aye. The ayes have it. A party vote's called for. I'll ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party.
14 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes in favour.
Mana.
1 vote opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 63, the noes are 57. The motion is agreed to.
Immigration Amendment Bill, first reading.
The question is that the Immigration Amendment Bill be considered by the Transport and Industrial Relations Committee. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Aye. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Party vote's called for. I'll ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party.
14 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes in favour.
Mana.
1 vote opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 63, the noes are 57. The motion is agreed to. The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Immigration Amendment Bill be reported to the House by the 10th of September 2012.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Party vote's called for. I'll ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party.
14 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes in favour.
Mana.
1 vote opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 63, the noes are 57. The motion is agreed to. Call on Government Order of the Day number 2.
Commerce Commission International Cooperation and Fees Bill, second reading.